365 Bootcamp. So let's get started. I hope everyone feels safe. A quick introduction about me. I'm a senior solution architect in Dynamics 365 Power Apps, Power Platform, Azure. Working in Dynamics since very inception of the product 1.1, and certified architect in 365 Power Platform and Azure. This is my LinkedIn profile and the Twitter. Let's look at the agenda, right? I just want to the session more about talking about the SharePoint integration and also sharing my experience, which I've seen across all the customers, right? How they manage the document or content management system, right? How critical for any organization, right, to manage their content securely and safely in their enterprise system, right? So this is our agenda. Let's look at the very first slide, right? So first of all, customer, why do they need to do a SharePoint integration, right? There are many reasons, right? The very first point is it simplifies your content management and improves your collaboration, right? Meaning you don't have to go to two or each applications to manage your own content, right? So it's the need from an organization to have it in a centralized place, right? Anybody in an organization can easily access and start collaborating to the document, right? So that's a core statement for that. And yeah, so you don't need to know the application. So if somebody a multimedia team is working on the content, they don't really need to know how the application works, where it is, right? So all they need to just go to the centralized repository directly and start collaborating and start contributing to this document, right? And of course, we know that SharePoint is much cheaper storage compared to any other document repository, right? And no restriction on size. When I say no restriction on the size, it allows up to 15 gig per file, right? I don't think anybody can upload 15 gig in the business side, right? And also upstream downstream system can also like access the content since it's in centralized place, not in the application storage or not specific to a database. They can also start accessing your content if your data is being accessed by multiple upstream downstream systems. Cool. So, okay, I understand that. So do I need to pay anything for this, right? Not really. So these days, SharePoint services bundled up with other Microsoft products, right? So if you get E3 or Microsoft Office 365 Enterprise 3 license, the SharePoint service is part of it, right? Or if you get D365 customer engagement license, SharePoint is part of it, right? So there is not necessarily to buy for it, right? So most of the organizations, what we have seen so far, they are migrating towards cloud, right? Either they're using their O365 services or they're using other services, other business services in Microsoft ecospace. Okay, so say then how about the storage, right? What do I get? So if you have any of this license, Microsoft provide you a 1 terabyte storage size at your tenant level, right? So, okay, so are there any compliments when I buy more licenses? Yes. So there's a 10 gig of storage added to your the main storage every time when you purchase a license, whether it is E3 license or customer engagement license. Right. So say if I have exhausted with all the storage, right, my user seats are not growing up, right? Then what is my additional storage cost? It's pretty cheaper. I think 20 cents per gig. Right, so that cheaper SharePoint storage compared to any application storage. So if applications are start using their storage to capture or store the documents, SharePoint is the best option to move for it. Okay, so does user need any licenses? Of course, they need a licenses, but it's part of, as I said earlier, it's bundled as part of your E3 and Dynamics license, right? So there is no overhead for the administrator to go and manage the licenses, right? It's automatically bundled up. But from the SharePoint standpoint, the user has to be added to a security group or AD group. Depends on the. I've seen both the practices in other customers. So they'll have enterprise Azure AD level groups where they sync up the membership from their on-prem to Azure Ready. They use that for controlling the permissions on the SharePoint. Some cases I've seen they used out of the box security groups what Microsoft offers as part of SharePoint, like read, full access, admin access. I've seen they are using that groups as well. Okay, so can I access the, say if I integrate this? So nowadays we know that people they are on the go, right? They're not necessarily sitting in office accessing the content. I've seen a lot of field reps and field says how do they access it, right? Yes, SharePoint integration can be accessible from the mobile and your Outlook app, right? Can I upload? Yes, you can. Can I view? Yes, you can do it. So what I've seen in the mobile app, you cannot delete the content at this point, but Outlook app you can do it. All right. So can I bring my own SharePoint? Right. Say I'm on-prem customer. I'm using Dynamics 365 as a business service in the cloud, but I would like to go with my existing storage, right? Because of so many reasons. So can I integrate? Yes, of course. Dynamics 365 does supports a wide variety of integration, right? It does supports online to online SharePoint or online to on-prem. So it supports the hybrid integration. And how do I do that? It's quite easy. There are a set of configuration steps you have to perform on your SharePoint server. And there's one license need to be assigned, SharePoint Online license need to be assigned for the service principal on the cloud. And the SPN configuration needs to be done at the Azure Active Directory domain service. Pretty simple. Not as simple integrating to online, but it takes a few steps. Okay. So how do I set up? In this case, let's take an example. Like we want to integrate customer engagement with SharePoint Online. How do I do that? It's a very easy step. It doesn't take more than 5 minutes, right? So all you need is you need to have a SharePoint site. Either you can ask your global administrator or SharePoint operation team who's managing that. They can set up your site based on the term or naming convention what you want. Then come back to Dynamics and go through the server-to-server integration wizard to quickly enable the integration. And the final step is the final step would be based on your need. You enable the document collaboration on a specific entity, right? So you may want to do it at the account level, you may want to do it at the contact, or even on the custom entity. Right? And does this support document rollup? So what does it mean? Say I've enabled SharePoint integration for the account, contact, opportunity. So I'm looking at my customer 360 profile, right? I would also like to access my opportunity contents available at the opportunity record level without navigating away to opportunity, right? So yes, the rolling up documents at the customer level or contact level that is supported out of the box. Right? So let's take a look at it, how we can quickly set this up. Right? Before that, is there any questions?
No questions, Prabhu. Thank you.
All right. So I have the trial instance up and running. So let's go to the SharePoint site for now, so that we'll create a site and we'll come back on this. I'll access the SharePoint. So mostly this activity will be done by your global admin team. If it is a smaller business, I think if you are managing the IT team, right? So then this is where you come and create your site, right? So come over here, say my site, sorry, home, and say create site. So mostly we need team sites, not the communication site. So let's choose team sites for now. So provide your site name and so ignore your group email address for now. Then this is your site address. Provide the description of it, and you can keep them as private or keep them as a public. Mostly the recommended option is here, go with the private so that you can manage the membership manage the permissions to your documents to a smaller set of groups, right? If you feel this document will be accessed across anyone within the organization, then we can, right? So, but this integration standpoint, I think we'll go with the private. Yep. So click on next. If there is any multiple administrator want to manage this, in our case, say we'll skip this for now. That's it. Your site is ready. So this is our very first step. Let's copy the site for now. So we need this when we enable the integration. Let me copying until the site name. Yep. So let's come to the advanced setting from the personalized option. From the setting, navigate all the way down to document management. This is where we do all the SharePoint integration stuff. Let's give a couple of seconds for this. Let me try opening up another tab. So once this page renders, there's a couple of options. So one of the option is using the server to server integration. Once we set this up, there's no way we can go and turn off the server to server authentication. Right? So before it loads, I'll quickly talk about the mode of integration, right? So Dynamics and SharePoint supports two types of integration: client and server. More of a legacy way of integration. The modern way of integration is doing the server to server authentication. The client to server, you might have remembered if you have worked in Dynamics in the past, there's something called list component, right? So you have to install the thick client, you want to install the particular package on your SharePoint server. That's how you get, once you install and go through all those configuration, then you get your the SharePoint subgrid or document grid on your entity forms, right? Where you could see it comes with the SharePoint ribbon command bar, right? Where you can create a document, inline document from there itself, or you can maintain the versions, right? That's uses more of a client server mechanism for the integration. And the modern way of doing it is through server to server integration, right? So client to server integration, the downside is you have to authenticate twice. With the server to server authentication, it's as soon as you log into Dynamics, system understands that you already authenticated against your Azure Active Directory. Then accessing another service on the cloud, it understands that you already signed in, so you don't have to sign in again. Let's see what's wrong with this here. Okay, so in the meantime, so once we enable this, where do I access? How does it look like? So before enabling, can I access this within the Dynamics entity form? The grid is still available, right? Let's go and check it out, see how does it look. File. So this is where you collaborate with all your documents. So it says that you haven't turned on your SharePoint integration yet, right? So this is the message being displayed because we haven't turned on this integration yet, right? So the page has been loaded. Let's go to document management under setting. Yeah, there are a few options. So there are many ways you can store the document within Dynamics, right? The very basic thing, use out of the box notes. The document will be maintained in Blob behind the scenes, or you can enable OneDrive or use SharePoint. So enable server-based SharePoint integration, right? So this is the option where we're going to turn on the integration here. Let's click on this. Pretty easy and three-step process. You don't have to know about where is your SharePoint server is located, right? So you don't have to know all those information. So let's get started on this. Click on next. It asks whether online or on-prem. If you say on-prem, it'll just give you an instruction what needs to be done, right? So the person who's setting up should be a global admin and also part of the SharePoint form administrator. In our case, well, let's go with online. Click next. Yep. So then preparing your site. The last step is validating the site. So since we already have sites created, so that's a prerequisite. You have to create the site before turning on your SharePoint integration. So this is my site. Let's click next. So it's going to check that whether the site has been defined or not, or is it a valid URL. So it says validation is successful. Let's go ahead and finish it. Okay. If you've seen that option has been, the option disappeared here, right? Once you turn on the server to server integration, you cannot turn it off, but you can, you have an option if you don't want to a document collaboration for a specific entity, you can turn that off. So that is possible. So the very next step or the final step, say document management setting. This is where you go and pick and choose your entity, which are the entities you want to have the SharePoint grid, SharePoint a document grid. The page is trying to pull out all the metadata list of entities what we have. By default, Microsoft has kind of selected certain entities. They feel that these are the entities you might be using for collaboration. So account is there. Let's look for contact. Okay, let's enable for contact too. Okay, so you have to provide the site URL here. The reason is this is where the folders are getting created in your SharePoint site, not the previous step. Previous step is just hooking up Dynamics instance into SharePoint. So this particular steps, you have to provide the same URL again. And can I come back and uncheck this? Yes, you can come back and check at any time. There is no restriction here. So I'll leave the rest of the entities for now. Click on next. Yeah. And so based on an entity, right? So either you can, I will explain a little later about this step. So I'll just leave this. I'm not selecting anything. So when I say next, what happens behind the scenes? Microsoft is creating a document library for every single entity that we have selected on this. So we will get that in a bit. So it'll give you the a progress about each entity, how many entities we have selected for the. Okay, let's start creating the library for us. If you remember back in the days, this library creation process was at the entity level, right? When you upload a very first record, it will prompt. If you remember the prompt, we are creating a folder, right? It was tied to at the record level at that point of time. Now it's more like seamless. It is at the integration setup level, right? So it says that you have selected 39 entities for the collaboration. For 39 entities, each entity has a unique document library, right? And says status success. So it has created a library for all this entity, right? So let's see from the SharePoint behind the scenes how this library looks like. Come back here, click on my sites just to refresh. Okay. So in earlier days, the SharePoint used to show a document library here. With the online version, let's click on the site content. There you go. So the entities which we are chosen for the integrations, all these entities were created as a folder in the SharePoint site, under your SharePoint site, right? If you closely notice this, in the list component days, list component was using the schema name of an entity, right? With a server to server integration, it's using the display name of an entity, right? Then we might ask, hey, what if I change my entity, right? At later some point of time, is my integration going to break? Not really, right? So say you have an account now, tomorrow if you're changing to customer, it's still the integration would work, right? So there is an association or the link has been established between this entity and the SharePoint. So if you change entity, it doesn't affect anything really, right? So what is there in this folder? If I click through, yeah, it takes me to a default SharePoint list view. So as of now, there is no documents, right? Okay. Now let's look at from the Dynamics account form. Earlier we used to get this error. Let's see what happens now. Let me click on the refresh here. Okay, let's refresh the whole page. Navigate to files. Okay, so now the entity understands that. So yes, there's a corresponding document library available in the SharePoint, right? Now we are getting a kind of a subgrid over here. If you kind of remember back in the days, there used to be a command bar on the top, right? Which comes with the SharePoint command bar, right? This is something a native command bar, so you don't have an option to create a document. Yeah, you have an option to create a document from here, but you don't have an option to do a check-in, check-out from here, right? Let's upload a document, and we'll go back and see how this document is stored, or how it is, how the documents and the folders are structured in the SharePoint. Let's look at it. Choose file. I'll pick one of the dummy file and say upload. Okay. So the document has been uploaded. Let's go back here. Okay. Yeah. So how fast is integration, right? So I just uploaded the document already. Okay. Let's go back and come here so that I can just take you through the path. So we know that we uploaded for an account. Click on account. You see there's a subfolder gets created. So this subfolder, the way the naming convention of the folder is your entity primary attribute name. In this case, it's account name, and with the underscore, then the account GUID. Right? So this is how it ties the record from Dynamics into the SharePoint folder, right? So next time when you upload the document, it knows where exactly it has to upload the content. So click on this. Yeah, you can see this document. So as I said in the beginning of the call, any multimedia team, right? They don't really have to come to Dynamics to access this content or start contributing to this content, right? They can directly go to SharePoint and they can start editing this content here. Right? All right. So quickly, I'll take you back to the slide. Just want to talk about the folder structure, right? So we know that the root is a site. Then underneath is a document library, which is automatically created at the time of integration. So any new entity which you turn it on, there will be a corresponding document library, one level under this site. Then whenever you start uploading a content for any specific entity at a record level, the corresponding record, a corresponding folder gets created with the combination of your primary attribute name and the primary ID, a unique identifier for record, right? So that is your third level. then the documents are maintained at the fourth level. Now let's see how the rollup works, right? Okay, so I'll close this window for now. So let's look at this is fine. I can access my I can upload or access content for my customer. So there's a recommend that I wanted to access the content which are available at the contact entity level, right? I don't want to navigate to a contact, but I would like to see that content available as a roll up on my customer or account 360 degree, right? So let's see. Before that, let's upload a content for a contact. Then we'll go back and change the roll up setting and we'll come back and see how the roll up appears, right? So that you understand the differences, what I'm referring to. So let me navigate away to a contact. We'll just do one document upload and we'll come back and see how the document appears on that particular record level at the contact. And we'll go back to the related account and see if that roll up is happening, right? Pick an existing contact for now. So, okay, so I use Adventure Works. Let's come from there so that we can. Okay, so Brandy Days. Let's use this contact for now. Files, upload. Let me upload the same document. Okay, so now we have uploaded a document at the contact level. Let's navigate to the parent account. Let's see if this is if I can access my contacts documents as well from there. Files, not really, right? So I can access only the contents available at the customer level. So if I wanted to enable the roll up, right, so that it's easy if somebody is looking at from the customer 360 view, right? Say they're looking at the the business objectives and the opportunity agreement, right? So or the case entitlement, right? So in that case, the roll up makes more sense, right? Let's see how do we go and turn on the roll up. So pretty much I have to come back to the same place, document management setting. Right, so look for contact. Oops. I'll uncheck this one now so that I'll get an option to associate the parent for the rollup. Click next. I clicked on next. So this also just wanted to walk through this use case. So if I go back and uncheck document collaboration for an entity, what happens on the SharePoint? Does the document library gets dropped? Am I going to lose all my documents maintained there in SharePoint? Not really, right? So if you look here, yeah, it's just trying to set up the folder. It says already exist. For contact, does it say that the folder already dropped or the folder is deleted? We don't see this contact because we haven't. It's unselected, right? Let's finish this. Now go back here. Say, okay, I have to open here. Site content. Refresh this. Just to check whether the contact folder is there or not. Yeah, so contact folder is there. Library is there, and there is a folder, and there is a document. So if you turn on the if you turn off the document collaboration for an entity, nothing really changes from the SharePoint side. Still, your document library and your folder and documents still persisted in SharePoint. Let's look at from Dynamics what the document subgrid would display. Right, is going to display anything? Yes, pretty much the similar message. If you remember when we looked at from the account, you're gonna say that the collaboration has been done. Yeah, collaborate and share file easily ask your admin. So it understands that the document it's not enabled for the contact. Okay, so now let's enable the roll up between account and contact so that we can access contact related content from the account record itself. We don't have to navigate away, right? So let's again search for contact, the contact, click next. So this is the place where you have to pick your entity for the roll up, right? Account and contact. So currently the product does support a roll up only at the core entities level, account, either account or contact, right? If I have a custom entities, if I have a different data model, you cannot use that for now. So that's one of the limitations. So let's use account. Let's choose account for now and click next. Document libraries are being created. Okay, so this is a common message. Click OK for that. Okay, so though I've enabled contact again, it says that there's a document library, corresponding document library already exists, right? Okay, so let's go to the account and see if there is any changes within this account document library. Okay, there's no changes, right? So the steps what we just did, it did not create any document library. Any document library for contact, it's already using the existing library, right? Then how this rollup is gonna work? Let's look at from the account. Let's start uploading a document and go to account. Okay, no changes here. Okay, so let's do one thing. Let's create another contact for this account. Then we'll upload a document for that. So existing content, it won't show up here. So any new content which you upload, that's how it comes the roll up. So that's another limitation. So let's quickly create one of the contact. Let's say for now. Okay. So let's upload a content at this the new contact which we just created. Upload. All right, so let's go back to an account and see if there's any changes. Yes, there's a change, right? So along with the documents which are uploaded at the account level, now you start seeing a folder called contact, right? When you click through this, you can access a content which is uploaded at the contact level, right? From the account itself. Right, so let's look at how this works, right? Let's see from the SharePoint side. Go back here. So is this a folder or is this a document library? Like let's look at from the SharePoint, right? We'll understand. Okay. Uh, Let me reopen the account again. Right. So what's happening? Once the moment you enable the rollup, for every record level, there is another folder gets created, right? That's how it's having a references on the that's how it's holding the references for the rollup. So when I click on contact, I can see the contact related folders. If you understand the if you look at really close, this contact folder it's more of a referencing folder, right? This is referencing to the contact library. So yeah, it's just referencing to this document library, right? Where is that? Yeah, right here. So it's just having a references to that particular record level folder. So that's how it is rolling this up at the account level. So there are use cases I've seen in the market. Say a typical example, I'm at the opportunity level. I would also wanted to see what are the contents available at the account or at the customer level, right? So rolling the documents down to the child entity level. Is that possible with out of the box? That is not possible with out of the box integration. So if at all you wanted to access the customer level documents, you have to navigate away to the customer and view the document. So roll up is possible, roll down is not possible. So coming back to the slide, so we have seen the how the document structures are maintained in the SharePoint behind the scenes. What happens if we also discuss about the rolling up documents and the standalone or entity level documents, how that is maintained in the SharePoint. Right. Cool. Coming to the next slide, right? Let's talk about the pros and cons, the limitation with the native integration. One of the limitation, it's been there for quite some time, right? A record access, so the security part of it, right? Say most of the implementation in Dynamics, the security it's very core, right? So there's a lot of business scenario, business use cases. Certain folks or certain group cannot see certain data, right? So in that case, in that occasion, if I'm uploading a content or if I'm enabling a content management for that, can they access the content on the SharePoint, navigating to SharePoint directly? Yes, they will, right? So uh, two systems, Dynamics and SharePoint are two different systems, right? And the security concept for both the systems are totally different. Dynamics has more granular level of security model. SharePoint, other way, it's in a different security model. So you cannot really control the records document visibility on the SharePoint, right? So that's one of the long waiting limitations on the SharePoint integration. And if you observe closely, this integration is very tightly coupled. Right? Say customer is centric for everything, right? So if Dynamics is sourcing the customer information from the upstream system, similarly, the other system also would like to source, right? So mostly in most of the implementations, the customer informations are maintained outside Dynamics, right? The system of records for the customer information is your customer master data, or your MDM or EDW, right? So the various system which owns the customer record, right? And there are a lot of business application around that which sources the customer information from the system of record. So they also would like to access the content, right? For what? um, for the unified customer 360 view, right? They would like to access the content. All this business application wanted to access what each application is doing at the customer level, right? What content they are maintaining. So the content that are maintained in Dynamics, it's very tightly coupled. Unless you understand the structure, right? You cannot really access the content outside the application, right? So you need to know there is a multiple libraries are there. You need to know the record ID to go down and fetch the record, fetch the document for that particular record. So very tightly coupled. And we saw that the document rollup. So document rollup it's doable, but it's the rolling down the document is not possible. And also another limitation, you can roll this up only at the account level and the contact level, right? So what if I have an opportunity and I have a bunch of custom entities? I would like to see, say, opportunity and my deal team is there. They are also maintaining some content. If I wanted to roll this up to opportunity level, that is not possible. So roll down we looked at tag-based search. that is something I'll come back a little later on that. As I said, upstream downstream system has to really understand how the documents are maintained in the SharePoint in order for them to access and edit the content, right, which is maintained or managed with the Dynamics. And records with 5,000, this is very rare cases, but when you start writing a middleware, right, you'll encounter this issue, right? So then in the beginning, I mentioned that the list component client server model, client server integration model, where you had a nice command bar which has certain options of SharePoint, where you can check in, check out, right? So that has been gone from the UCI. You can still access it from the legacy, but this is gone in UCI. Okay. So what are the workarounds, right? How are we gonna address these issues? What are the workarounds, or what I've seen in the market, right? So I think a lot of ISV vendors, they started building the products to address especially the security part of it, right? So a small service running behind the scenes, it start replicating, looking at the users security role permissions and the team access, team membership permission, then start replicating those permissions or managing the permissions of the document. A lot of tools are available or products are available in the market to address that gap. And enabling the tags. So I'll explain what I mean by tags, right? So if you go back to SharePoint, okay, so behind the scenes, the SharePoint maintains the record unique identifier, Dynamics record unique identifier. This is GUID as one of the column, right? So that's how the data has been fetched. Not necessarily all the upstream downstream system will have Dynamics unique identifier maintained in their system, right? Where Dynamics is not the system of record for customers, right? So you have to maintain the source system's record ID, right? So for example, MDM is a system of record for all the customers' data in an enterprise system, right? So MDM maintains the unique identifier for the customers. So when you migrate the customers or when you bring in the customers on a day-to-day basis to Dynamics, you might bring the source system unique identifier. So can I use that here, right? Not really, right? If you don't use it here, source system cannot access the content what each business application is maintaining the centralized location, right? Because their system of record unique identifier is not maintained in any of this column. So it's very difficult for them to, to not only for the source system, even the other business application cannot collaborate, right? Cannot access the content. So this is nothing but a tag, right? So similarly, you can also define as many attributes in the SharePoint. Say, I want to categorize, or I want to categorize my document, agreement versus a business document, right? So we can create a field just like how we create fields in Dynamics. You can also create a field in SharePoint and use them as a tag, right? So using that particular field value, you can fetch the document, right? So that's what I meant tag here. And with a custom way of integrating, say, if you want to replace the document grid on the entity form with your Canvas app, we can do it, right? And you can introduce those attributes at the SharePoint level and start populating those values, right? So how do I populate the values? So you can use Power Automate, right? Power Automate has a pretty good connector with SharePoint. So you, based on your trigger, whenever the record is created or updated, if you want to populate those additional fields, you can do so, right? Using Power Automate, you can do it. And using that value on the Canvas app, mostly you'll be having a data table or a gallery. You can fetch or you can pull the list of documents based on this tag which you define on the SharePoint, or based on a field value available on the entity at the record level. Use it as a tag and fetch those documents. And another way, yeah, build a beautiful PCF control. Use the SharePoint Web API or REST or client-side object model, a different mechanism. Write your own logic to bring those documents. Right? Or if you're kind of looking at building an enterprise-wide solution, right, where the same component can be used on a multiple business application. You can build a single page application using a SharePoint middleware service, so that all other application can use this component on their business application. So these are the workaround how we can address some of the limitations laid down here. Moving to the next slide. So we in the previous slide we talked about the workarounds, right? We talked about the Power Platform connector and the middleware, right? So when do I use either of this option, right? So what is the difference between them? Right? So we know that Power Platform connector is accessible only within Power Apps and Power Automate. We cannot really use, or the upstream system, downstream system cannot really use this connector to fetch the documents from the SharePoint, right? And of course, the licensing cost is associated to it. So the connector will run into a 5,000 record limit, right? So there is a limitation on the SharePoint. SharePoint, you can upload as many documents, but you cannot really view more than 5,000 documents in a single view. So it has that limitation. Then again, this is also kind of a little bit tightly coupled. What we have seen in the native integration. On the other hand, SharePoint middleware service, you have much more control, right? Because you're building a middle layer for that, right? You're building a middleware, or you're building a custom service to integrate or to collaborate with the SharePoint system. So you have much more control. You don't have to follow what Dynamics is defining the folder structure. You can define your own document structure or document hierarchy there. Of course, the hosting cost is involved, and you can overcome this 5,000 list view limit. And this integration is loosely coupled, since it's a done through a custom way of integration. Any system can use the same middleware services, can access the content, right? So that's the beautiful part of it. And you can define your folder structure, roll up, roll down, possible at any entity level. And since you're going to define the folder structures and the data model, you have an option to define the tags, as many tags in the SharePoint, that allows you to improve better search experience, and also addresses the security gap, because the document is always accessed through the SharePoint middleware service. So in my experience, I've seen a lot of this integration, out of the box integration, Power Platform connector, and custom way of integrating I've seen. So I've taken one use case using the SharePoint middleware service, how it has been done, right? Let's look at some of the snaps about that. Yeah. So before we jump into that, most of the enterprise implementation, right? They might use, or rarely they switch from one document storage to another, because they have been using this for a very long time, right? So they cannot really, or they cannot quickly change to another SharePoint service for a content management, right? So with a middleware service, you don't have to worry about what is the platform is going to store the content, right? So any existing platform, a dynamic system can be integrated through the middleware service. So of course, there's a custom workers involved, but that is possible, right? So customer might be using a Documentum as their content management system, or they could be using a SharePoint on-prem. They may not able to move to online because of so many reasons, and the security concern, other thing. So with this, you can still, your Dynamics can be integrated through the middleware service. So let's look at the use case. So the use case, what we're going to look at it. So kind of I was part of this implementation, so I'm very close to that. So I wanted to share that experience, see how this middleware service is used, and how much wonder it brought into this implementation flavor, right? So there was a SharePoint integration framework has been built, right? And this framework is currently it is being used in production. So it's been used by more than 6 to 7 business applications. Each applications upload a content to same centralized location, and each business application can view each of this content, right? So that's everything was possible through the middleware service. So there's a Java application, there's a .NET application, there's a standalone application, Dynamics, and multiple iOS apps, right? They're all accessing each other's each customer's content. right? On the say customers agreement and other information they're accessing it. And the key highlights of this is it's one-stop shop for content management. Contents are maintained in a centralized repository and well-defined the document hierarchy. A lot of tags, they can use the customer ID or they can use other ID to fetch the documents, right? So that's a that the tag allows them to do that and easily integrated. Today, 5 business application. Tomorrow, do I need to make any change? Not really, right? Bring in other business application can easily hook up to this, and they can start accessing their historical documents. And since it's a custom development, it's a one-time cost or one-time and a little bit of maintenance cost, right? But very cost-effective solutions for sure. And look at some of the architecture, how it has been done. This is a sample architecture. So the web API component, it's in a web apps hosted in Azure, right? And it's acting as a middleware service. Then so the above one, if you look at CRM is accessing that. On the right hand side, there's a lot of other business applications, a mobile app and Java applications are accessing this the middleware services to upload or collaborate the content. So the middleware service at that point of time, like there's a bunch of operations where they're uploading the content. Set file attributes is nothing but you're setting up a tag for the content. Your search services searches the content based on the tags what you provide. By search the document by a customer ID, a search document um, by the other attributes, say customer type. So this middleware is built and hosted on Azure, and it's kind of using a mechanism of client-side object model. This is one of the mechanism. Assume that it's a proxy library, just like what we have in back in the days in Dynamics proxy classes. Similarly, SharePoint provides a lot of proxy libraries. Very easy to implement. It doesn't take much time. So it uses a kind of proprietary language called camel query, just like how our fetch XML, we use fetch XML to interact with the dynamics, right? Similarly, the CSUM supports a camel query, so that SharePoint understands that camel query. It's nothing but your filters and other thing. And all these things is running under a service principle. So you don't really need a licenses for all the users, and that's how the security has been addressed, so that users, when they try to log into SharePoint, they don't have access to the SharePoint at all or a particular site at all, right? So everything is controlled or governed through the service principle. And yeah, let's look at the assume that this is a business application, right? Or assume this is a data model in SharePoint. Just like in Dynamics, SharePoint also you can create a document library and relate them, right? So you have a customer contact opportunity like that. You can define the document library, how in the native integration it was defining. You can similarly define your own library. And this is some of the samples. If you look at, taken an example for customer and appointment and another entity called survey, right? So all these attributes, what you're seeing here, they are defined. Some of the attributes comes out of the box in SharePoint, like created on. They are defined as a additional attributes on the SharePoint, right? So two key attributes, business entity type and business entity ID. This defines which library you're targeting for. Entity type is the library. So if you remember the search service I was talking about, so when you search, when you want to search documents in SharePoint, you have to say the entity type. So it's nothing but your library, and entity ID. So it's basically the source system record ID. So that's how it has been addressed, the roll up and roll down and the search experience. And let's look at the document structure, right? Pretty similar to what the native integration maintains. You have a root site or subsites. Underneath, you have all your entities as a folders document library defined. Then one level down, so there is another subfolders. So this is where the logic is there. So if you look at the condition items less than 5,000, right? So every time when the documents are getting uploaded into a SharePoint, it checks what is the number of documents, right? So that we'll avoid this limitations, what SharePoint setup at the list view level. If it is more than 5,000 record, or if it is 5,000 record, then it will start spinning up another folder, say customer 02. Likewise, the folders gets created once it reaches the 5,000 limit within this folder. So this folders subfolder will have another folder called which is similar to what Dynamics maintains. So it uses primary attribute and the combination of primary key. Similarly, we'll use the business entity ID, what we saw earlier, the unique identifier of a particular system. It maintains that ID. So as a subfolder, from there, under that, there's a document gets uploaded. Very similar to the Dynamics folder structure, but a little more flexibility to avoid this 5,000 and the additional folders. Yeah. So this is how the custom SharePoint grid was built back in the days. I think now with a lot of open source tool being Angular or React, you can build a wonderful, beautiful list view where you can maintain the content, right? So what was the mechanism used at that time to move this document, right? So we are defining the folder structure and the document hierarchy, everything. How do I bring in my existing documents to fit in this, right? So that we can start using these documents, right? So you have to do a document migration. Once you define the document hierarchy and the tags, you have to bring all your historical documents into that and define all the tags. So the one-time data migration needs to be done so that the system, the services what you're building will you can use that to access your historical data, right? If there is no need of an historical documentation, then you don't have to migrate, but mostly you need to maintain the historical document. So you have to have a document migration. I think that's pretty much we come to an end of the session. So any questions?
Thank you, Prabhu. Very, I would say, very concise session there, covering a lot of the issues on SharePoint integrations, which you've covered from a technical perspective, which I think the users really benefit from. So thank you for going to that level. So Prabhu, I'm just looking at the questions here. I think the main question that's been asking, I think the main question is to do with the SharePoint security. I think that was the main question that people are asking here. I'm just reading out for you now. It says, Prabhu, this is by Roy. Prabhu, what's the best way to implement D365 security access, i.e. parent-child business unit based security in Dynamics across SharePoint as well? Currently, the security model across Dynamics does not flow back to SharePoint library.
That's true. Yeah. Roy, thanks for that. So now lately there are a lot of products available, right? ISVs are building a lot of products. So I think there are a few products available in AppSource. I can put you the link, or I'll share that link. I don't have it in handy, but it addresses that, right? It addresses a complex security structure what we have in Dynamics, right? Whether the parent-child business unit, whether you're part of team membership, it's taking care of that.
Great. Sander is saying, hi, I can upload with a flow a new document that the SharePoint into SharePoint and see it in Dynamics files entity with SharePoint integration when there is no ready map in the SharePoint document library. I'm not sure, Sander, if you could just confirm what your question is. Is it a question or is it your approach to the security? If you could just reply, that'd be great. Okay, what's the next question? Can we create custom roll-ups aside account and contact?
Sorry, Raj, I missed that. Can you say that again?
So there's a question by Bentali who's asking, can we create custom roll-ups asides or besides, should I say, account and contact?
Okay. Not using out-of-the-box integration, right? You have to either go with the custom way, right? As I defined earlier, you can go with your Canvas app and Power Automate, and define those as a field on the SharePoint, that helps you to do a roll up not only at the accountant contact, even at the other entry level. But with the out of the box, it's not possible at this point. So, but you can overcome quickly with Canvas app and Power Automate.
Right, and okay, final question, because we don't have any more time. It's asking about the creation of tags directly from SharePoint. I know you don't have time, but if you want to give a quick answer, I know you talked about the tags, but if you could just quickly mention how you'd go about creating tags in SharePoint.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. So before we define the tags, right, before we assign the values to each document or tag each document, so we need to identify what are the list of fields we need, right? So we have to collaborate with the SharePoint team. So they have to create those attributes for us. So the attribute has to be available on the SharePoint first. So once they define the attribute, we have to tell them what is the data type, right? Just like similar to Dynamics, SharePoint also does supports multiple data type, whether you want a text field or you want to the whole number field or you want a drop down field. So once you define, right, then it falls under us, right? So you have to go and identify each document and define the tag, right? If you're doing very first time, you don't have any content management in your system. So this is the very first thing you have to do it. So once you I'm just talking from more from the custom integration standpoint, right? So once you define your document library, very next step is, are there any tags, right? Based on your understanding from the business, are there any tags? Then define the tags before you even turn on your integration. So define the tags. And once you define the tags, then it's our responsibility to populate or stamp those tags, right? As and when a document is uploaded, the services which you're going to use or the process or connector which you're going to use, the connector has to supply the values for those tags, right? So when a document XYZ is uploaded, say for here, let's take yeah. So if you take this example, right? So I'm uploading a document for a category contract, right? Category, it's nothing but a tag, right? And source type is nothing but a tag, right? And say COF, it's a unique identifier for a customer. So this is a tag. So once you build your integration, when you upload your content, you have to set the values for those tags. Then only it's a meaningful, right? Using this tag, you don't have to necessarily know what the identifier, the document identifier, what SharePoint has. You can use this any of the fields to pull the document. So that's the purpose of tags. It enables your search in a better way.
Thank you once again. So once again, thank you, Prabhu. We're well over time, so I would like you to could you share your contact details with the community, so that they can keep in touch with you, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure, Russ.
Excellent, excellent. Well, once again, thank you, Prabhu, joining all the way from Canada, who has a lot of experience in SharePoint integration as well as Dynamics 365 and Power Platform. So I want to thank you once again, Prabhu, for taking your time and doing this live demo for us. Thank you so much.
It's great pleasure being with the team. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Fantastic. So that was Prabhu. Okay. So now we're on to our next